So, September has rolled around here, and the weather is already getting quite autumnal. It's becoming quite rainy, a bit cloudy, not very cold yet, though people seem to have different opinions than I do on this, because we have two people from Greece and two people from Mexico who think that there is something wrong with me for still wearing open shoes. Besides this, I seem to have convinced a majority of my hallway that I am some sort of mythical forest creature from beyond the veil. I don't quite know how I managed it, and I am not super keen on shattering the illusion. I think it might have something to do with the fact that I collect blueberries and mushrooms in the forest. That could be a point to this. Also, I made them pancakes. That seems to have a huge impact. If you ever want to make friends really fast, make them baked goods. I take a lot of walks, and right now I'm actually sitting outside in the forest, which is like 10 minutes walking from where I live, and I'm in the middle of the forest. It's great. I love living here. It's fantastic. I am, however, being attacked by a multitude of mosquitoes. This is less great, and I am decidedly not in love with this. Yeah, I wish they would not do this. If they could just leave off, that would be fantastic. I have, since I've been here, been rereading the summer book by Tove Jansson, because I am in Finland and it seems like the thing to do. Also, Tove Jansson is amazing and one of my favorite authors of all time. So that's another reason. Also, I think it might be required reading for one of my courses. I'm not sure, but that would be a bonus. What I specifically love about Tove Jansson are two separate concepts, and one of them is how she manages to include empty space and not have the story be about really big happenings in the world, but instead have it be about small things, small adventures, so to speak. Stories within stories. And I really, really enjoy it. Whenever any form of media does that, I'm like all in. I am there for this. The Japanese actually have a word for this, which is the word ma, which I hope I pronounced right, but I'm not entirely convinced. And this concept is also the concept that has been described as what drives Studio Ghibli movies. It is the concept of an empty space, a pause, or a gap. The space between two structural parts. And in an interview, Hayao Miyazaki describes it as a slow-moving yet always moving emptiness. And this sort of negative space in which the stories are told, and what's actually the most important part of the story, is, I feel, very important to Tove Jansson's works. So instead of having her stories be about really big things, they are about small things, small little stories within the story. And I feel like this is kind of similar to what Studio Ghibli does, where both Studio Ghibli movies and Tove Jansson's books have very big things going on. It's just not the main focus of the story. So, for instance, in Spirited Away by Studio Ghibli, you have the big plot, which is, you know, Chihiro's parents have been turned into pigs and she's trapped in the spirit world and has to get them back. And in the summer book by Tove Jansson, you have the big story, which is Sophia's mother died, her father is very absent and like in mourning and possibly depressed or something, but she doesn't know because she's like 8 or 5 or really young at least. And her grandmother is very old, and she may also be dying. So that's really big things going on. But the book is not about that, even though it mentions these things. The book is about Sophia's small adventures, and not at all about, you know, how sad she is that her mother is dead or something. Though you can read that between the lines, it's not the point. And I think that is both very beautiful and very interesting to tell a story this way, but I think it's also very difficult, because it's kind of like having a story, having an explosion in your story, and then focusing on somebody lighting a candle in their window. And like every part of you wants to focus on this big explosion because it's huge, it's loud, it's bright, it's right there. But you focus instead on this small candle in the window and on this silent, small space. And I feel like besides being a beautiful way to tell a story, I think it's also a very interesting metaphor for kind of living your life, I guess. Because making a really big impact on the world is really hard. And not something everybody wants to do. I think we always forget that when we talk about this. It's not only hard, some people don't want it. And I'm one of these people. I don't want to necessarily, you know, make an explosion happen. I kind of feel like I would have to give up too much for that. Like, it takes a lot of sacrifice to make something this big happen, and it takes a lot of sacrifice of grey areas. You have to really stand behind what you think. You have to stand behind your opinion and your feelings, and you have to not change them every 5 seconds because, you know, you're making an explosion. You can't make an explosion if you keep scattering the gunpowder everywhere. And I feel like Tove Jansson's books remind me that it's also important to have that small candle, to light that small candle and make the small impact on the world. And sure, it's not big and bright, and it doesn't do as much for as many people, but it does do something for some people. And if a lot of people light a small candle, it is, to keep the metaphor going, bigger and brighter and makes more of an impact than one big explosion would. So I think that is really beautiful and like an interesting thing to think about for me. And the other thing that I really love about Tove Jansson's books is how her characters seem to sort of pass beyond gender, in the way that she doesn't tell a story about a boy, she tells a story about Moomintroll. And I feel like children's books do this quite a bit, at least more often than books for adults or young adults, specifically young adults, because they never do that, well, not never. I mean, there's probably some, maybe, I don't know. I don't know them. But this concept of genderlessness seems to be confined to children, and then again to very old people. They again get that genderlessness that children get to have, but that adults don't seem to be able to get within their story. And I understand this. I mean, gender is a really important part of a lot of people's identity. And it is usually also really important to people's like romantic and sexual relationships, which for a lot of people are very relevant in their lives. So I understand why books about adults have this gender thing going on, but very often I just want to read a story about a person that is not necessarily gendered, but has other things going on, is this specific person, and it doesn't matter whether they're a boy or a girl, or neither. So besides being an amazing artist and writer, these are the things that really draw me to Tove Jansson as an author.